you're getting overwhelmed, be ready for those moments that you're going to have to reach out to somebody in your network, a mentor, a peer, somebody to get an objective viewpoint to affirm your position or maybe tweak it a little bit to improve the outcome, but to not change it, because you're probably making a good decision if you're questioning that decision. And as long as you start to recognize it as it's happening and have a plan and a lever to pull when that happens, it's not going to go away. You're just getting in front of it before it gets to severe crisis mode.
I'm Tiffany Souter, entrepreneur, wife, mom to 4 girls, and a woman figuring it out just like you. If you're tired of living a life of have to and finally ready to build a life of want to, then you're in the right place. Come on, let's go build your life of and. This time of year, one of the most common things I hear from women in leadership is, I know what I should do. I'm just exhausted. I'm not confused. Well, maybe a little confused. I'm just so tired of deciding things. And what I've learned is that when decision fatigue sets in, it doesn't just slow us down. It quietly erodes our confidence. We start questioning decisions we would have made easily in another season. Today, I want to talk about how decision fatigue impacts our performance and why so many capable women start to lose trust in themselves, not because they're doing anything wrong, but because they're just carrying so much. Brian, I feel like this is something you see all the time in high-performing women, especially women who are just juggling a ton: careers, family, their own self-development, teams, communities that are relying on them. And so I'd love to just unpack this whole concept with you.
Well, that sounds fun.
So welcome back to another episode of Life of Ands. This is what we're doing today. And Brian's going to be joining me in this conversation. We've been working together for 14 years, and you walked through me in a lot of these seasons. And so before we dig too much deeper, I want to define self-trust just to anchor us in this conversation. And then I'm going to share a couple of stories that for me sort of epitomize the very valley of some moments for me in my journey to today. And then we're going to just kind of like start unpacking this. So that's what we're going to do. Before we dig too much deeper into this, can we just pause and can we define self-trust? Can you help us with that?
Yeah. So I would define it as self-trust is that when I make a decision or I take an action or I decide on a direction, that once I've made that decision, I don't question it again. So I think a lot of times people will say things like, well, I don't trust myself to make that decision, or I don't trust that I have enough experience to do that. But the reality is they're gauging their ability to buy into that decision post-decision, not pre-decision. They're avoiding the aftermath of the decision, not the decision.
So can I paraphrase that? So what I hear you saying is self-trust is about saying, irrespective of what happens, the after part, I'm trusting that in the moment with the information that I have, the context that I have right now, I'm confident in this decision and we're shipping it. That's what you mean by that?
Yes.
Okay. So let me add these 2 stories in and maybe even see how we I'm thinking of like an M&M where you've got like the peanut, the chocolate and the candy wrapper. Cause I think to me, what we're talking about is like the peanut of it. It's like the core, but it gets, I think, even messier than that simplicity when we're sitting in the context of a high achieving, busy working mom in particular's life. So 2 stories, as I was thinking about where my own self-trust felt so vulnerable. One was when I realized JR and I's marriage was not what I would say believed it to be, but I think that's probably not even 100% honest. What I had suddenly realized I had to stop pretending it was, but that pretending had become so much part of the way we interacted and sort of the way I wanted to believe it to be, that it was the sort of preferred pattern, And we have this moment where I realized, holy crap, this is not what I thought it was. And it eroded my confidence. It made me feel incredibly vulnerable. And it made me feel like, what else am then I couldn't have said pretending is right, but isn't, or pretending is okay, but isn't, but like, what else is not as it seems? And it starts to just feel like the earth is moving underneath you. In that same moment, I also need to become one of the most discerning versions of myself because we need help. But I'm like a bleeding, raw, emotional, thing. I still have to show up for work and pretend like everything's at least enough. It's not my people's problem to fix. I've got to figure out how to be discerning in the process of hiring someone that can help us. But like, it's like I have to use my discernment brain, but also I need help so bad. And I need to be able to be honest about that. And self-trust felt very scary and very vulnerable and very dangerous in a lot of ways. Second story is similar season. Aubrey and Ainsley were like 6 and 8. Ivy was a baby because I was still nursing. And it was a couple of weeks before Christmas. JR had been playing basketball. Something happened and he tore his bicep muscle. So he had to have this surgery where they like drill through your bone. That's like the bad part. His bone pain is very, very, it's terrible apparently. So it was like around the holidays, he is in an enormous amount of pain, can't shower himself. Like, this is what in the world is happening. I have this baby that I'm nursing and trying to drink enough water so that my body makes milk and doing my job. And I'm just getting back to work after maternity leave. And then I have a 6 and an 8-year-old who rightly have some magical expectations of Christmas. And they said to me when we were pulling in the house, our house doesn't look very Christmassy because we didn't have any lights up. It makes me emotional to think of it again because we didn't have any lights up. And I was like, oh, I have to put lights up. I have to put lights up. I have to put lights up. This is wild. This is making me cry. It's like 10 years ago. And so that night I got out the stepladder. I found like this is wild.
It's because it's a memory.
Yeah. Every like extra strand of lights that I could find. And I went outside and I put these lights on. And it was insane because it was the middle of the night. I had a stepladder by myself in Indiana, on the grass. Like, what in the world? And I look back and say today, actually, when I was thinking about this story, this is not how I felt about it. It's interesting that talking about it made it more real. But I was like, why didn't I just go to Lowe's and buy a snowman blow up and just like make it simple and spend $60 and not make it so hard? But in the just like, I can't do one more thing and the things I'm doing are not enough was like how I felt. And apparently I don't feel that way, but wow. I was just like, okay, I'll do it. I did not have the ability to say, this is insane. Why would I get a stepladder out, a bunch of mismatching light strands, and not just explain to them, hey, honey, like it's kind of a lot going on. Dad just had surgery. Or go to Lowe's after school tomorrow and buy something silly like a reindeer for the front yard. But I didn't have the capacity to make a reasonable decision. And so I continued to like make more true the unreasonableness of my life by making another unreasonable decision. And I can see that now, but when you're in it, it's the only thing your brain can come up with is another insane thing to do because you think this is the way that life just is. And so I make that true. So anyways, why am I crying? And we have to talk about this.
So the why are you crying is that memories and emotions are glue in the brain to one another. So when you recall, the reason that you remember it in vivid detail is because it was an emotional time for you. You don't remember stuff. Like if I said, what did you do next Thursday? You don't remember because you didn't have emotional things. But if you go back to an emotional event, it always comes out. So that's why you do that. That's why, like you remember trauma and all that stuff. The word is actually tyranny because that goes with the phrase tyranny of the urgent. And, if we talk about like a tyrant is somebody that takes over and says, I'm going to run the country. You're going to do whatever I say. You can't think anymore. I'm going to think for you, all of those things. And it's called the tyranny of the urgent. And that's what you became a victim to is I have to do this right now. And that is why it's completely irrational. Like, why does one person able to go in and say, I'm the ruler of the country and everybody goes, okay, it's the same thing. It's not even rational. There's more of them than one. They could easily take over, but they just sort of cave into it. So that's what was happening to you.
So how does that connect to this idea of self-confidence?
Because you get confused with what is important and what isn't, what is urgent become blurred and blended to one another where you can no longer tell the difference. It's this idea of everything is urgent and everything is important, that it's this little lie that you say because you knew the order. You were like, Dad has a surgery. He can't really do this right now. We've been busy with this. You knew the priorities of what was important. You were just unable to process them against urgent because you made urgent as important.
So when we're in these seasons, because I hear this from women of like, I don't even have time to do something else. Like, this is the only thing that the roller coaster has left the station and I'm doing everything I can to essentially stay in the car because there's no seatbelt. And you giving me advice is like blowing in my face. Like, it's not that helpful. And so how do we recognize when we're in the season? How do we pause the roller coaster, to not mix a million analogies? How do we do that?
It gets about stripping things away. And it sort of sucks because the answer is like right in front of you is you have to stop and take time to do that. Like to say to you in that moment, I want you to stop before you go out there and put the lights. I want you to stop and think about this. Your immediate reaction would be, I don't have time to think.
Totally.
But you have time to go put them up on a ladder and you haven't thought that through. It's just this irrational. So the fix is actually to start recognizing this is occurring to me. I am starting to do this. I am starting to do these crazy things. And that means that I'm being irrational, which means if I take the time to do a rational exercise of what is important and where do I need to spend the time, it will be worth it. But you have to learn the signs and to recognize those signs. Otherwise, you'll just keep cycling through it.
But I also hear women say, and I think this is like, again, the self-trusting is like, I don't know where to start. I don't know where my priorities are. But you listening to my story were able to say, you know your priorities. You just listed them. JR and then work and then the kids at Christmas. Like, you're going to get them all done, but make your decisions in that order and it's probably going to be fine. I can't see that in my story. I can't feel that in my story. Like, it all has equal intensity of bright lights shining in my eyes as intensely as possible. And so how do we get ourselves? Because I will have women say to me, I don't know where to start. I don't know and I know you say like, figure out your priorities, but is it just literally stopping and calling your mom, telling a coach, telling a coworker, like, help me, or just trusting yourself and saying like, write it down because you're probably right.
If I had asked you at the time, are you overwhelmed? Would you have known that?
Yes.
Okay. So there's your indicator. And the indicator says, if I'm overwhelmed, I need to do something. And that is what you said. Call my mom, call somebody I trust, blah, blah, blah. And simply tell them, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. Because that person isn't dealing with the irrationalness. That person isn't dealing with the emotions. They're coming from a place of objectivity and they will switch, whether they have skills or not. Their natural thing is that they're going to switch to, well, let's talk you through it. And blah, 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 blah. And you're sort of borrowing somebody else's rational, objective viewpoint when you don't have the ability to process it. So the secret to getting out of overwhelm is to do one thing first. So if you're walking out to your car and you notice that your garage is filthy, and so you decide one day you're going to clean your garage, and you're looking at your garage and you're going, oh my gosh, it's such a mess. I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do next. The first thing you would do is, let's just start taking stuff out of the garage. Or let's do this first. As long as you start with one action, your brain will start going, okay, now I have a next action. Now I have a next action. You have to get it into a series, because overwhelm is it's all coming at once. How do I get it into a series? So if I call somebody and say, what do I do? I'm overwhelmed. Okay, well, how about you do this? Okay. How about you do this? Okay. Because you knew to do that. I got to do something. But if somebody gave you that something, you would have been in the same place and able to execute.
Is there also something that happens where in some ways I wanted to be that overwhelmed and busy?
Yeah, it's a racket.
Which makes me want to vomit to say that out loud. But where does that come from? Because that's sick, actually. But
it's not that.
Am I being so dramatic?
Yes.
Well, that's who I am. But I remember JR kind of looking at me and I'm like, I said the words, I am so overwhelmed. disgusting a number of times a day. And I was like, that's the way I have to do it to get all this done, was my like stubborn energy. And I think he was looking at me like, I don't know, maybe that's not the only way, but you don't look open to other ideas. So I'll just let you be.
It's probably not that. It's probably what thoughts I imagine came through his head was, what about me? Like, I have this unbearable pain. I have all this stuff in my head. I still have responsibilities. What about me? And so you actually get into this sort of competitive moment at that time, because a racket is a bad behavior that you get a reward for. So you're saying, I'm overwhelmed and not getting stuff done. And you're getting rewarded somehow for that. You know, you're like, well, the girls leave me alone, or this, you're getting some payoff, and you're saying, I got to keep doing this to get this payoff. So it's sick. Yeah. It's twisted a little bit, but you needed a benefit in that moment. You needed to feel good because you weren't feeling good, and the bad behavior helped you feel good.
Well, I think it can become intrinsic for women where, and I think this is probably part of the racket for JR and I, we're like, he's not naturally verbally affirming to me. He's gotten much better in our marriage, but it's just not his way of appreciating me. And so I think part of me getting into this overperforming state was me being like, look, I'm amazing. I can get so much stuff done. Like, this is wild. Look at this enormous list of stuff I'm doing. But I think that was my version of the payoff, was like, show me somebody else who's doing this much stuff. And that was helping me to fill in this identity I wanted to have, which was like, I'm super high functioning and I can be great in a lot of different areas of my life. To what cost? I think I wasn't clear in the boundaries that needed to live in. But I think that was my version of the racket. I don't know if you see that in other places that you.
I've seen it in me. When I get into that mode, it's, see, look at all that I can do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's this feeling of, you know, you're in this moment of I'm overwhelmed. And you're switching it to, but look, I can handle it. I am amazing. I am important. I am the linchpin here. This is why, which then erodes your relationship even more because you're back competing.
I want to take a quick moment to thank my partners at Share Your Genius. For the past 4 years, they have been an incredible part of my journey behind the microphone. Share Your Genius is a content and podcast production agency that helps leaders and brands bring their message to life. So whether you're trying to find your voice, develop a content strategy, or get your leader behind a microphone, they're going to help you make it simple, strategic, and impactful. Do you think it also erodes your relationship with yourself?
Yeah, because you're lying to yourself.
Yeah. I think that's interesting, though, in this it's like counterintuitive in the act of trying to give myself what it is I think I want, which is affirmation and a sense of I'm Superwoman. I'm actually eroding my trust with myself because I'm playing a game inside of my own brain. That's wild. So what's a healthy version of that?
So a healthy version, going back to your topic of decision fatigue, is you're starting to feel overwhelmed. You just don't want to decide. Even though little decisions bug you, you start to recognize that feeling and you go, I got to step away. I have to take a deep breath. I have to step away. I have to focus on something different. I have to stop making decisions. I just have to move away. I don't have to be irritated with people. I don't have to have this whole thing leave me alone, but I have to step away and say, I need to add objectivity. Because in those moments when it's not just crisis, you have a much greater ability to say, I just need some alone time. I just need to process some things. I just need to be with my thoughts for a little bit and work it all out to get yourself out of that stuff.
You said the word crisis, and I sort of was thinking through this idea of we actually get to decide how long the crisis is. So in JR's an example of his arm, it's like, okay, when he calls me from the gym and says, which this is not like the surgery doesn't have to be done in the next 2 minutes, but it's like, you call me from the gym, something's wrong with your arm, you need me to come get you. That's like the crisis moment. This is requiring urgency from me. But once we like understand what it is, we can choose to stay in crisis mode, like clear the decks, everything has to change, blah, 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 blah. Or we can be like, okay, and now we just make a new plan. We've got new context, we make a new plan, and now we operate in that. Is that true, or am I?
Oh, it's true. Like if we said, let's make a list of people who seem to always be in crisis mode, we can come up with names.
Yeah.
But what does crisis mode do for somebody? Because it's a racket.
That's what I was, yeah.
And the racket is, I'm getting to avoid other things because these crises I'm dealing with, which are technically insignificant, compared to what they're avoiding is allowing them to not process what the real problem is or deal with those real problems. So another thing with decision fatigue is just avoidance of a hard decision is you'll go, well, I'm going to make these little decisions instead and avoid the big decision that's going to have a higher consequence. Our brain is very good. It's actually called hyperbolic discounting, where we take a problem and we say, I don't want to deal with that problem. We bury it in our brain so that we don't have to process it emotionally, and we walk around with it. So if you ask somebody, how you doing? And they say, fine, that is, it's there, but I don't want to deal with it.
What's it called? Hyperbolic what?
Hyperbolic discounting.
So that is right on the nose with another place that my brain went to when I was thinking about the season of my life, decision fatigue, lack of self-trust, is that I had an avoidance of the truth because it felt like one more thing to do. And so that's what this is this hyperbolic discounting where it's like addressing a major issue on my team where I need to go, replace an executive, that it's like, it's working fine enough. It's the problem I know it's probably creating more issues than I know. Like, because you would say to me, it's always bigger than you think it is. Or the issues in Jared and I's marriage, it was like, it was just never a good day to address it until it became the day to address it. Sometimes it can be issues with your health and like maintaining your own stamina. It can be problems with your kids where it's like, oh, it's not a good day to have this conversation with my like, you just never find the moment. And you fill up your time with like, unloading the dishwasher and sweeping the floor and filling your car up with gas and reorganizing the pantry and all of these things that are completely like irrelevant to the actual core of life, but can occupy 100% of our energy.
I'm going to say it this way, but the idea of busyness is the devil's tool is a very real thing, because busyness is avoidance. And busyness is division, and busyness is separation, because if I got to empty the dishwasher, I don't have to deal with it. If I got to do this, it's always avoidance and distance.
So I've shared some examples in my life. You work with lots of high performing women. Are there other vignettes or stories or, things where you see this idea of lack of self-trust, decision fatigue come forward that maybe my audience could benefit from?
So the two things of decision fatigue and self-trust go very close together. It's not just I'm tired of making decisions. It's I don't trust myself to make the next decision, or the decisions I'm making, I'm not sure were the right ones. So that we sort of have this reach back, look back kind of thing. You defined it very well when you said, they're looking at their decision, and regardless of the aftermath, the ability to stick with that decision is based on what is the feedback that I'm getting. So one of the things that I see, especially with women, is they'll make a decision, they'll process that decision, they'll rationalize that decision, and they'll go, this is the right thing to do. And then they execute on that decision and make it known. And then they start to get feedback. It'll be like, well, I don't agree with you. I think there's a better way. What if we did it this way instead? What if we da-da-da? And now they're getting all these feedback loops coming from them. It's coming from people who the decision affects negatively to a degree, which is why they're pushing off. And it causes, instead of going, oh, they're resisting change right now, they go it as, ooh, maybe I got it wrong. Maybe I didn't do that. And, one time, not a big deal. You get 10 times of that where actually your people have learned that if I push back, I might get a different outcome. You end up teaching people that. And then over time, you trust yourself less and less and less over time, because your feedback loop does not have the affirmation from somebody to go, no, it's the right decision. You're doing the right things. That is the right move. They're just pushing back because they don't want it to affect them. And you get into that overwhelmed feeling again of, maybe I can't even make decisions because every decision I make, they don't trust, they don't respect, they push back. Maybe I shouldn't be in this position anymore. Maybe I shouldn't do this anymore. And you go in to give up, but you were making the right decisions. They were absolutely perfect decisions.
Oh, that's so true. As you were talking, it also makes me think that when that's the environment where you start or stop decisions, you actually are not deciding the quality of your decisions on the actual outcomes. It's on the sort of crowd's approval or not. And I think standing apart from the team in those moments is very hard for a woman. Like, to say like, hey, this is what we're doing. And the only times I think I've really done well at that is when I knew we have no option.
Right.
We have
Your
no
back was against the wall.
Totally.
You had to do it.
I have to.
Right.
And learning to make decisions before you get to that moment has been a real step of maturity for me. Of like, it doesn't have to get to the place where I used to say I lived life like a game of bumper cars, where I would go so fast until I hit the wall, and then I would go so fast until I hit the wall again. And it was like these crash moments that would get my attention to say, maybe you need to trust yourself. Maybe you need to look at your intuition 9 months before like, maybe you need to trust yourself a little bit here and not have it have to get to the place where it's so acute to really stand in a new choice.
But the root of this a lot comes back to this idea of a belief that I control more than I control. Like, I control how they hear it. I control how they take it. I control how they respond. You don't control any of those things. You control the decision. You do not control the aftermath. How people receive it or what happens because of it is all outside of that. So people that have, like, I want to be in control, I want to know I control things, the mechanism to get better at control is to realize I don't have as much. I have control of myself. I have control of my decisions, but I don't have control of how people respond. Frees you up to go, after this, it's not my problem. And that is a hard thing to let go of, is they're just going to respond how they're going to respond. But it's not going to change my mind. And you have to be very convicted, and this is the right decision ahead of that, so that you're not hit with that aftermath and letting it negatively affect you. And the best way to do that is to talk with someone and go, how are they going to take this? So you're prepared. And when those things happen, you go, oh, this is normal, versus I did the wrong thing.
Anything to talk about as it relates to one of the issues that we were talking about before we pushed record? A theme that would be helpful to.
Here's the last piece, and I hope this helps with people's thinking, is that if you are dealing with this problem, it is because you're really good at making decisions, and you're actually really good at managing your life and everything around it. Because you never get to this point of being overwhelmed with tasks and responsibilities if you weren't able to carry a high load. And you never get to this point of questioning your decisions if you weren't making good decisions that actually cause change. So the people that don't struggle with this ever and seem to just navigate life as if nothing's going on aren't performing at their highest level in any way, shape, or form, and aren't even close because they don't deal with this. So the good news is there's also an indicator of, I'm doing a lot of things right, but I have to work on this, as opposed to, I can't do anything right, I don't trust myself anymore. It's like, no, this is an indicator that you're right there on the precipice of just solving one little thing that can fix everything. It's not that I'm in the wrong position, I shouldn't have done this, maybe I'm not good enough. All the little thoughts that go into your head, only high performers run into this problem, which is a very weird thing to hear.
If someone's listening to this, like, okay, I get it, this is me. And they're like, where do I start?
Start by first acknowledging that you know when it starts to happen. You know when you're getting overwhelmed. You know when you're getting reactions to your decisions to do that. And be ready for those moments that you're going to have to reach out to somebody in your network, a mentor, a peer, somebody to go, I want to tell you what I'm thinking, and I want to know what you think, to get an objective viewpoint to affirm your position, or maybe tweak it a little bit to improve the outcome, but to not change it, because you're probably making a good decision if you're questioning that decision. And as long as you start to recognize it as it's happening and have a plan and a lever to pull when that happens to execute, you'll start to get right. Because it's not going to go away. You're just getting in front of it before it gets to severe crisis mode.
Made me think of almost putting this question in your pocket where it's like, what decision could I make that would not make me feel overwhelmed? Like even my Christmas lights, it's like, I could do it tomorrow. Because you just get in this reactive manner that just makes you manic.
Yeah, but if you had called someone and said,
this is my idea.
My kids have told me that's not there, and I just want to go outside and put up lights.
Yes.
Somebody would have said,
yes,
how about you say this to them and do this tomorrow?
Yes.
Like somebody would have given you that gift, but you didn't know to reach out because you're going, I got to take care of this. I can handle this. I'm holding this all together. I'm the glue. You were in that racket mode.
Yes.
You didn't pre-plan to make the call, phone a friend.
Yes. I think that's a great segue into the close of like, self-trust is not about having all the answers, and it's not about never feeling overwhelmed. It's about having the confidence and the courage that you're going to recognize that moment where it's like, man, I'm getting into this. I just strapped on my cape and I'm moving into superhero mode, and nobody's going to win when I'm in this moment. And so step number one is to call a timeout, pick up the phone and call somebody and export. This is about what Crazy Pants is about ready to do. Like, can you talk a girl off the ledge? And, I think that what I love about this too, I think it can also be a racket where as professional women, we say, oh, honey, I know, me too. I'm so exhausted. And it's like, we just perpetuate the racket with one another. I think that's the biggest calling for me for Life of And is to say, no, like, and you've taught me this, Brian. It's like, no, I don't need to accept any of those things in my life permanently. They may be conditions temporarily that get my attention, that force new behaviors to be formed, new disciplines, new sort of like triggers of awareness. But those are not conditions that we need to accept as a very nature of being a high achieving, performing person who says, I want to be excellent every area of my life. And so I feel like what a cool summary to such an overwhelming feeling. I mean, it drew me to tears again 8 years later, 10 years later. And it's because you feel so incredibly alone. And the thing to do is to call somebody and reach out and say, like, help me. So anyway, as always, thanks for joining me, Brian. If you are interested in having Brian or someone on his team help you with things like this, your mindset, getting control over your potential and growth and sales in your business, then reach out to Lushin. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Life of And. This has been a really special one for some reason for me. And I hope that if this touched your life in any way, that you share it with a friend. I really appreciate every single time you give us your gift of time, and hope that you're having a wonderful new year. Thanks for joining us, Brian.
Thanks for listening to The Life of And. This is your weekly reminder to keep making bold choices, saying clear yeses, and holding space for what matters most. As always, if you like this episode, I'd love for you to drop a review and share it with your friend. It's the fastest way that we can grow the show. Thanks for joining us. I'll see you next time.